I think as a way to get this rolling, I suppose we should probably introduce ourselves a little bit. I'm John. I'm the one hosting this one this time. Although the idea here is that we're all doing hosting stuff, so all of us are hosts in one way or another. Those of you who aren't aware of my platform, Coaching Volleyball, coachingvb.com is my blog that I've been doing for coming up on 7 years now. I got going doing this stuff probably around the same time you did, Manolo, when everything started getting shut down and we had to have something to do. So, hey, let's have some conversations with some people and keep talking about volleyball. My background is in terms of coaching is all over the place. I've coached NCAA Division I, Division II, JUCO, juniors level, coached in Sweden overseas, coached in England at the university and the club level, then do a bunch of different professional and national team gyms. So I've seen a lot of different stuff over the years. So that's kind of me in a nutshell. Manolo, why don't you go next and talk about how you get things going?
Well, in terms of coaching, first of all, I have been involved in coaching in Puerto Rico, of course, where I was born and raised. So saludos en Puerto Rico, los que nos están viendo. But at the same time, I spent some time there in the pro league where I got the opportunity to coach alongside some of my biggest idols as coaches there in Puerto Rico. And names are Ramon Monchito Hernandez and Javier Gaspar, who actually are also Hall of Famers at Penn, in Penn State in the AIVA as well. Mm-hmm. And then I came to the U.S. because I was just curious about continuing to learn. So I started, in the bottom of the bottom, in the middle of nowhere in Kansas, great junior college, just a different experience for me where, just to give you a brief example, I used to live in the dorms in my first year as a coach in Sure. the NCAA because of lack of money. So then, I kept gaining other opportunities, but basically what I love doing is building or rebuilding programs. So I spent some time also in Evansville, Indiana, where I was the head coach, and also I was the founder and creator of a club there that is now serving as a filter for feeding system for that university. And then I recently moved to Eastern Illinois University, where we have the same mission here, and it's basically rebuilding this program in the NCAA Division I. And when this pandemic started, I wanted to create a platform that started just for Latin America because I felt that it was a community that needed more and better information from volleyball around the globe. But I have had the opportunity to spend some time with people from other places. So it has become something a little different, but still with the same goal, which is education and trying to get together and just talk about the game we love.
Yeah, for sure. All right, Jan.
Okay, my name is Jan Maier. I'm from Germany. I've been coaching about 30 years nearly now. I got to coaching since I tore my ACL on a skiing trip, and somebody from my club just asked me, do you want to coach? I said, okay, I can't play right now. That's how I actually became a coach. But I always have to apologize to the people. Actually, if I think today what I did these days, I still apologize to these first 1, 2, or 3 teams, what I did there. That's what it is. I think we all know these kind of thoughts about the first teams we did. I coached from youth up to semi-professional / professional second division here in Germany. Last team I had 18, 19 with second division women. But that club was actually very professionally driven since it's been in the first division for 16 years prior to this. And so they, with all might, wanted to come back up, but it actually went terribly wrong. But no, I'm not the coach anymore of that team. And for the last year, I did a lot of, not research, but I did a lot of self-teaching about volleyball, and I used the time I have actually to look in the world, what all the other peoples do. I've been an exchange student to the US when I was 18, so I got to know the American culture of high school and college sports. So I'm always very interested in this. And this is how I got to know John somehow, since I was on the net and looking for information. In March, when the Corona stuff started, John actually invited me to his conversation talks as one of the first 3, I think, on one topic that really is a topic that really interests me. And after this, I just tell it this way, I was completely flashed and inspired about these kind of sharing information. So I talked to the biggest volleyball blog in Germany. It's called Volleyballfreak. We have about 26,000 followers on Facebook. If you see that we have about 400,000 club volleyballers in Germany, 26,000 is a pretty big part of it. And Steffen Probst immediately, the maker of this volleyball blog, said immediately, okay, let's do this. And we did already for the last 9 weeks, we did these coaches talks, and that was just simply incredible. I have learned so many things. I have seen so many different views. I got to know so many people, the networking that actually started even between the people watching. That was just incredible. So I got inspired by John, and I know that our talks inspired an Austrian beach talk as well. So see, John, it's spreading all over. And that was just fantastic what happened in the coaching network throughout the last 10 weeks. Yeah,
it's been I think overall been a great source of connectivity for everybody, where most of the time we only see each other at events. We're coaching against each other, or we go to the same conference, or we're recruiting against each other in the same convention center or something like that. So we don't get a lot of time, especially during this time of year, to kind of sit down and talk volleyball, talk shop.
I completely agree. Many coaches in these talks said this as well. Normally, you see each other at matches. Okay, you drive there, you play, you lose, you win, you drive home. And in Germany, you have every 2 or 3 years, you have to do a recertification process, so your coaching license stays valid for another 2 years. And these recertification classes are the only things, or the only situations where you see other coaches. And throughout that day, for 1 or 2 days, it's going to last, you talk to the people, to the other coaches. This is the only thing where you actually talk to other coaches. So this is exactly what they all said. We get to talk to each other on a completely different level. We never talk that much to each other. So the networking works perfectly now. So this is one of the big things.
Yeah, and I think that the reach that we're able to have because of this unfortunate situation, some of the best coaches in the world now have the time that they never have. Yeah. So it's always on, like, coaching is so on the run, and we're always looking, the coaches are always looking for the next thing, that when something like this happens, it might be the only time that we get to talk to some of the biggest names in the world, at least one-on-one, without having to go to the country that they are in. So, it has served as this, learning, networking, but at the same time, discovering type of tool, just because, you find out that from base to the highest level, people are thinking about the same things. They're making similar mistakes. They're still wondering and trying to get better, and they still feel that they haven't reached their peak. So I think that that's the biggest lesson that I have got through all these conversations that I have had with coaches, is that you find out that from levels of Anastasi, Castellani, Marcelo Mendez, Karch, they all have the same problems, the same volleyball problems, and they're trying to search for a solution that once we, like I have said a couple of times, like Mario Benedetti says, that once we find the solutions, the questions change. And I think that that's the constant search that we are in as coaches, and but it's also good to discover that no matter the level that we're in as coaches, we're all on the same boat.
Yeah, and I want to talk a little bit about the formats that we're all using, because I think we're all probably a little bit different in the way we're doing our own versions of these conversations. For me, a lot of it is I try to bring in probably 2 other coaches. There've been a few times where it's just been me and one other coach, and have a discussion about a topic. So there'll be a topic for that conversation. So somebody like Mark Lebedew, who's been on a bunch of times talking about a bunch of different topics. There have been a couple of them that have been a little bit more lecture-oriented, seminar-oriented, which have been fine. I've basically told people I'm casual about this. I'm open to whatever you want to do. Anything topically that's coaching and or volleyball related, let's go. Let's have a talk. See where it takes us. See what questions we get. You know, that's the great part of it. And so you get some good, interesting dialogues. Manolo, most of what you've done has been more one-on-one, right?
In the beginning, it was not. It was more of like I was trying to get, because I didn't know how long this would last, so I was trying to get as many people on the same conversation.
Okay.
But, you know, now it has been more one-on-one than anything else. And it's not necessarily a specific subject, but we just adapt the subject or the line of conversation towards who the guest is. So I always tell the guests coming in that to approach it like a living room conversation with wine in hand, you know, and how would you talk to me about volleyball, you know, in that type of situation. And the number 2 thing that we tell our guests is approach it as the people watching you are Olympic level coaches. So I think those are the 2 things that I've been wanting to do, of not trying to, we want to be simple, but we wouldn't want to be elementary. So we want to make sure that we continue to create more questions from the viewer than answers. We want them curious about the subjects that we're trying to touch base on.
Sure. It's funny that you talk about having, you know, in the living room with a glass of wine, because one of the things that way deep in the background motivated this was back in September, I was in Barcelona, and I was spending time at CV Barcelona, not FC. Although I did go to see FC, I got to walk around the stadium and all that.
Nice.
And on the Sunday while I was there, myself and the head coach of their professional team, and another coach, I think Brazilian coach, because actually both the guys were Brazilian. We went out just down the coast and found a nice little restaurant that was open air with, you know, kind of really eclectic sort of environment. And we're just, you know, it's Spain. We're drinking sangria, we're eating tapas.
That seems so.
And just talking coaching, talking volleyball. And I was like, this would be just such an amazing thing to do, like Sangria Sunday. And just like, how can I recreate that in some way? So obviously it's a little bit more challenging when you're online, but that idea was kind of that little seed in the back of my head. So when you mentioned the wine, I was like, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And the project started with me and not having any platform, but just talking to someone through an iPad and saying exactly like my friend Jose Reyes, that's the name of the first guest. I was like, instead of us talking through the phone throughout this pandemic, let's just talk and see who watches. Let's just put our conversation live and see if someone is listening. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, like, people started watching that, and then they started like suggesting other people and wanting to be part of the conversation. So yeah, that's kind of like how it began.
Right. Now, Jan, your stuff has been a little bit different, right? Because you are doing sort of some of the recertification stuff.
We're doing 2 things right now. We started with coaching with trainer talk, we call it. The German word is trainer as well. And we have had in the beginning 3 coaches besides me and Steffen, our Volleyballfreak, who's doing like moderation, like Twitch type, the moderation. screens the chat and all this stuff, and he does all the marketing stuff. And the very good thing is about preparing for this. I have a few questions that I would like to ask to the topic. I send them the coaches first, but most of the times I never get to ask all of my questions, since the dynamic, if you have 3 coaches, it goes in a completely direction, and you do very good if you just let them go. And this is exactly the Sangria Sunday you said. This is exactly what you want. You want that the coaches start a conversation, and then the spectators kick in with questions, and then you have all you got. And this is the entertainment and the knowledge sharing you have. So it's not like just an interview. On one-on-one, I think this is more difficult. But if you have 4 coaches there and you ask a few questions, you get them going, then it's just enjoyment all the time, like the rest of the talk.
Yeah, and you know, and one of the things has been that everyone is so different, and you know, when you are starting a conversation with someone that you do not know, I think that is a really good challenge as an icebreaker. You know, what is it that you have in common that is going to spark the guest opinion and sincerity? You know, how do you get the guest to feel so comfortable that is able and willing to share? Because, you know, it's natural from us as human beings that we start a conversation guarded. So how do we actually, you know, take that down and make them feel like that, like they're actually just talking, not being judged, but actually just having someone to listen? How about you, John? Like, what has been your experience and basically your line of approach?
Yeah, it's been different in different cases, and sometimes you're not really sure what's going to happen. Sometimes if I know the people involved, because maybe they don't know each other, for example. So you don't know who's going to necessarily jump in at what time. So that's when you become more of the moderator. Hey, what do you think, Joe? What do you think, Susie? You know, to try to keep things flowing. It's, you know, I haven't had any like proper outlines for the conversations. I've had people who've come in, like I said, a couple of them were more like presentation style. So they came in with a clear idea of what they wanted to talk about. But the ones that I've kind of just had open conversations, like I might have like 4 things that I want to make sure get in the conversation somehow that I'll just have written down. But then for me, a lot of it is just listening to the conversation. All right, a question came to mind. Let me write that down. Of course, fielding questions from the people who are watching and that sort of stuff. And there's
exactly what you would do in a hotel lobby on a 2-day tournament when you sit around with the coaches. That's exactly what you have. You just sit around and talk about all, and the dynamic kicks in of the conversation. Yeah.
Yeah, well, and Manolo, you could probably speak to this. It can be a little bit tricky when you're kind of doing a one-on-one with somebody, being engaged in the conversation, but also thinking about the questions you want to ask them.
Well, you know, I don't know. I think that it just probably came from my dad that, you know, I engage myself so much into what the person is saying that because I'm not pre-thinking about the next question, I'm leading myself from what the person is saying. And it has helped a lot. I have to say that now people have watched. So even if I don't know the guest, they have watched the program. They have watched, for example, what I'm passionate about. They have watched that I'm also a coach, so they can actually talk volleyball. So this is not going to be a press type, you know, a media type of interview that is going to be superficial, but they can actually talk about the highest level of their knowledge without thinking that it's just going to stay there. You know, they know that there's going to be a conversation, and they know that their point of view is going to be respected. Now, in the beginning, since it was more towards specifically my island, because I want my island to continue to create change within our sport.
Sure.
It had that type of challenge where, for example, one of the guests that I had was the president of the federation, who I have been trying to hold accountable. in other interviews. So having him one-on-one, he actually came with a notebook of stuff that I have said. So, so those are the type of challenges that I've been facing. But honestly, it has created, at least it has been maybe a small part of a positive change. And it has started conversations about, you know what, I think the same or I think differently, but at least that's what we want. We want people thinking. We want people caring. We want people to stop looking at volleyball from the stands, especially if you're a coach, if you're a player. We cannot continue to see, just like anything in the world right now, we cannot continue to see things from the stands, from the crowd. We have to take an actual stand into what we believe, and then continue to actually get uncomfortable listening to other people's point of views. I don't know what do you do with so many people in your group, Jan? You have 23,000?
I'm not really involved in that volleyball blog. Okay?
Right. But it created that, right? It created that movement.
Yes, the movement is, and the Volleyballfreak blog is a blog that is not concentrating on the upper 3 divisions, but it's concentrating on, I don't know what to say, they concentrate on the whole volleyball scene. And we have a league system in Germany that goes sometimes down to 9th division, all the way down. So there are a lot of people playing competitively for hobby, but they are as competitive as the 1st or 2nd division. And so the target group is not the volleyball we all talk about, but the target group is where the most people play. So in our talks, it's always very, very important for me that the high-level coaches also give tips. How would they act if they just have practice twice a week? How would they do? Would they include strength training when they have 2 times a week? How would they approach a practice? How would they prepare for the next opponent at the weekend? So this is the thing. What really it's important for me to get the target group and get everybody who's actually watching. And the coaching clinic thing we had that just developed parallel, John. I know that after we did the first talks, we said, okay, this is also a very good platform to do like coaching recertification credits. And but in the beginning we said, okay, maybe the state federations, they wouldn't tell it's legit for recertification of the licenses, but we did, okay, let's do it anyway. And our contacts were pretty good, and we got very lucky in the beginning to get very good coaches. And we said, okay, we just do this course. We do this clinic. You do not get any credits, but we want to do it anyway since we just believe in the platform and this 1-to-N thing, okay? And suddenly, I know the first certification course clinic we had 90 participants, and the record is 120 right now. And then it was much easier. The state federations somehow, not all of them, but some of them came up to us and said, okay, we would accept the credit, and we give the people credit for renewing their licenses. So this was just absolutely great. So these are 2 things right now, but the talks inspired the coaching clinic, the online coaching clinics.
Okay. Yeah, Manolo, one of the challenges that we've had in the U.S. is getting college coaches because of compliance. So can you talk? I mean, because you're in that situation right now. Yeah. So what's been the discussion with compliance people about doing these things?
Well, to be honest, I haven't had a coach in the U.S. that has said no. I have had only 2 people in the program that have said no, and they're not in the U.S. So everyone has said yes. The only thing that we have to pay attention to is that we cannot pick questions from the comment section. Like, we cannot just engage in a conversation with them unless we are like absolutely 100% sure that it's not someone involved with prospective student athletes. then we cannot engage in such conversations. So as long as we stay within those guidelines, we can talk about anything. Like tomorrow I'm going to have Tom Black. Saturday is going to be Kevin Hambley. Next week, Susie Fritz, and all that. So they're more than willing to share. And that's something that I've been really interested about, because in just one country, so many different philosophies that are still very successful. So, it's for me interesting how to see one pot with so many different perspectives being able to get to the same goal. So compliance wise, it has been really good. My compliance director has been actually even watching the program. So I feel comfortable, knowing that we're doing the right things in that regard and trying to keep ourselves from any sort of like gray areas in that situation.
Sure.
Could you please explain real quick for all the viewers that are not really don't know the American system? What's the issue about this? You're not allowed to talk about prospects or with prospects?
So let's put an example that John is a club coach, okay, a young ages club coach that or in the recruitable age club coach.
Yeah,
I cannot talk to you. I cannot engage or in any conversation as well with you in the comment section.
You are not allowed to talk to coaches that coach people eligible for college.
Correct. Unless they're like someone involved, like club director or something like that.
Okay.
Then we cannot engage, in any other type of conversation. So it could be club coaches from base ages, but we cannot include anyone in those type of situations. So that, and then we can also
time frame.
Huh?
When does it stop? Is this generally? You may not. You must.
100%. 100%. Yeah. To be honest, if you see the list of rules for compliance and during this pandemic, you can find out that the people that made these rules probably do not have social media. So, because they're like rules that you're like, okay, you can do this, but you cannot do this. This makes no sense whatsoever. But that's where we at. And that started maybe halfway after my program began, mine and John began. So in the beginning, there was nothing because this was never done before.
Right.
But then they came up with these limitations of how much we can interact with our viewers and stuff like that.
Crazy.
Yeah. One of the things that somebody mentioned that they had heard from their compliance was, well, it can't be recorded because then it could become a podcast, and that's a problem. I'm like, coaches have done podcasts and YouTube videos for years. There's millions of them out there. You're going to pull a ball down? That doesn't make any sense at all.
All the time. No, and then, they look at one of the restrictions that they wanted us to have. You cannot have a comment section. That tells me right there that they do not have social media. So whoever created this do not have social media, because you cannot disable such element in certain social medias. So I think this was just made like thinking, okay, generally, how do we keep coaches away from talking to PSAs?
Sure. There's a question on Facebook. What's actually the reason for this? Is because of possible corruption in the recruiting process?
That's the fear. Yeah,
that's what it is.
Yeah, that's the fear all the time, and basically I'm answering this question from Facebook because it's a question about compliance. But that's exactly the concept. We should not even answer questions like that. It's actually something that it's very difficult to explain, because this is how we interact with people, and that's why people watch these programs, to be part of things. That's what people do. Yeah. Those are the rules. And then, the other thing that they're worried about is that there's a rule outside of the crisis, that there's a rule that if John is a recruitable prospect, meaning in volleyball, from 9th grade until senior year, okay? Or for the ones watching Latin America, de la escuela secundaria, then I cannot I cannot comment publicly on anything he shares. So even if John says, I'm very proud to commit to Manolo's university, I cannot even say congratulations. I cannot say, hey, welcome, until they sign a letter of intent. But until then, I cannot even say congratulations. I have to ignore it. I can just like it. And at some situations, I can repost it or retweet it or share it.
Yeah, exactly. And they
don't
keep
have
tweaking those rules.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. But I can then talk to John on Messenger.
Right.
But then, when this rule started, you could actually talk to John on Messenger, but you cannot text him. This is when it started. So again, that tells me right there that they're still trying to figure some things out, and you know, it is what it is.
I mean, it's been a running battle for the NCAA to try to keep up with technology.
Yes.
And the use of social platforms and all that.
All federations have.
Yeah. And on top of that, they've actually put more restrictions in as to when college coaches can actually talk to recruits. Because it used to be, you know, there were times when you could mail them, not like anybody mails anybody anymore, but then, you know, when you could call them and all this sort of stuff. But there's been such a backlash against early recruiting, what they call early recruiting, where you basically need to be going into your junior year now. So grade 11, you know, so what is it? Is it June 1st, July 15th? What is the current cutoff? Yeah.
So I cannot tell you because if I tell you this, you're gonna think that I'm lying, but the rules have changed this past week, the week before that, 7 days before that, and then 7 days before that as well. Yeah. So, you know, I cannot answer that question right now, but I can tell you that juniors, you know, there is a yes, we can talk to them. But now, no one can visit any university until at least July 31st now.
Yeah. And coaches can't go off campus to see anybody either.
Right. But you then, then any prospective athlete can have at least one, you know, they can watch one virtual meeting of the team. So I
didn't know about that. That's interesting.
Yeah. So basically it's like a normal, like one-time visit to that specific school. So they can watch one virtual training or meeting or whatever it is.
Okay. All right. That's interesting. I hadn't heard about that.
So for a European coach, that sounds very complicated.
It is
for American coaches. For American coaches, it's complicated.
What for? Okay.
I mean, the whole principle of it is supposed to be fairness. They want to try to keep everybody in an even playing field, even though that's kind of ludicrous. Because let's face it,
so if
you're in the Pac-12, if you're in the Big Ten, you're not on the same playing field as if you're in the Ivy League or the America East or whatever. So I don't know.
So since we just have club volleyball here, so school there is some university volleyball, but this is not as big. It's not. It is competitive, but the public doesn't notice these games at all. So so in Germany, like in most of Europe, it's mainly club volleyball. I can go to every gym I want to and watch a game.
Right.
To youth, there is no restriction at all. And if I talk to a prospect player, I can do this. I would probably talk to their current coach first. Yeah, that's what I do. But normally you don't have to. There's no.
To be fair, and Manolo can appreciate this because you've coached at that level. The rules are different for junior colleges, and then they're different for the NAIA, and they're also different based on which division of the NCAA you're in. Yeah. Because Division III restrictions are much, much narrower than they are for Division I.
For me, what is interesting is like there's a rule that I think that at some point it's gonna have to be rethought. Okay, so there are certain leagues in the world that are declared professional, and then there are center leagues in the world that are not. For example, the Puerto Rican League, the Pro League, was not professional until like 2003, 2004. Players would come during the spring on weekends and play and then leave and go again. So like you will have like NCAA players coming into Puerto Rico, playing during the spring and then going back to spring practice with their NCAA teams. But now it's
since their league was not considered professional.
Say it again?
So since the Puerto Rican League was not considered professional.
It is now considered professional. So I just wonder who's sitting in what room thinking, you know what, this league in this country, it's professional, but then this one is not.
But there's another part of it too, because players are not supposed to play in outside competition during the academic year. Now, I don't know when that rule went in, because it used to be that college teams could go play what was then USVBA or, adult nationals or whatever you want to call it. So,
but then John, how do you explain baseball being able to play summer league?
I don't.
So they're playing legit baseball level, and that's the same level as when they graduate and they go into like AAA. It's kind of like a similar level as the summer league. So there are other sports that are willing to actually compete throughout their time in as a student athlete, but then our sport is not able to.
Well, maybe that's because it's in the summer. It's not during the school year. That's the only thing I could think of. Well, because, I mean, I coached in England, and, to Jan's point, they do have university volleyball in England, and there's quite a bit of it. It's quite popular in terms of participation.
Yeah.
Now, not in terms of people actually showing up and watching matches or caring about it at all, because that's more the National League itself. Yeah. But the teams there can play in multiple competitions. They could play in Bucks is their equivalent of the NCAA. So they've got that. They can play in any sort of either the National League, maybe the regional league or the city league in their area. Volleyball England does a cup competition for students. That's a separate thing that they can do. So you could play as a student athlete. You could play in 3 or 4 different competitions, depending on how involved you want to be. And also, and this is I think a big issue with our system, they can field multiple teams for their colleges, because they've got different tiers, and you could have a team in Division 1 and a team in Division 2. If you're in a big enough region, another team in Division 3, which is great for development. It's like having JV, which for the most part of the college level we don't have. Some schools do, but it's a minority, not a majority.
Tell me about this. Tell me, what do you think, John, if I tell you that our sport in women's volleyball begins in a normal situation in the 3rd week of August, around that, and we're not able to train during the summer, okay? But then there are sports who play in the spring that have small group workouts and individuals and all that, and they do not play during the fall. So
this will be my next question. What do your players do off season? Do you practice at all?
Oh yeah. No, we train, we practice. Like,
are you allowed to do scrimmage games?
Yes. Yeah. We have a limit of 4 dates that we can 4 dates total off season that we can use, and we can play multiple matches. But then during the summer, just 4.
From January until
final exams, wherever, usually early May. Yeah.
And then once that hits, then you get in a system where only the strength and conditioning coach can work out with them throughout the summer.
Yeah, we're not allowed to do anything with them over the summer.
So no ball practice.
Speechless.
Hey, and no, I actually understand that, because they're still students. They actually still, people, they're young people that are at least in America. That's the norm, where that from 18 to 21, 22, they prioritize that in those ages. So I understand that part. I just do not understand how their spring sports are able to train during the summer, and then the fall sport just think about it this way. We throw 17-year-olds to play against a 21-year-old. And like we tell them, hey, you have 2.5 weeks to prepare to play in the highest level in college in the world. Good luck.
Yeah.
It's true.
Good luck.
Yes.
It's true. Well, and that actually brings up, a different consideration that sometimes comes up in the recruiting idea is you get coaches who say that their job is to recruit players who are better than the players they already have. Well, okay, if you're in a rebuild, then that's probably what you're trying to do. Yeah. But if you're established, then your 17-year-old or 18-year-old coming in as a freshman should not be as good as your 19, 20, 21-year-olds who've been in your program for 3 years. If you're doing anything at all with them during that time, they should be stronger, faster, jump higher, hit harder, read the game better, all that sort of stuff.
Unless they're internationals.
When I think about the U.S. college, when I think about the U.S. college system, I just think, what's her name? Jenna Gray from
the center from Stanford. Yeah, she just signed, right?
She signed to Dresden here in Germany just a few days ago. Has she ever played against 30-year-olds?
No, but
highly unlikely. Yeah.
She was offered to play in the pro league in January, but she's a track athlete.
Yeah.
So
I know this, yes.
late her time, and now, I think that she has never been thrown in that situation. Plummer has not been thrown in that situation except national team. In the national team, they have been in such situation, at least Plummer. But no, they had never played against a 30-year-old, who actually is competing against these really, really, really young players. So that's why I said that when we get freshman internationals, they're as ready as maybe our seniors because they're playing with 30-year-olds since 17, since 16 or whatever before that. So I think it's a different type of evaluation when we go after internationals just because of the exposure that they have towards different elements, including emotional independence coming into America.
Yeah, we have like players in the female part, they have not finished high school and they already play first division professionally. So, and these are probably ones that also get scholarships from the US then as a freshman to go over to play college. But if they're good enough, they probably won't get out of pro anyway, since they say, okay, no, I'm already pro, I'll do this.
Yeah, and I think I told you this story.
Do this.
Yeah, I think I shared this story with Jan. Along the same trip that I went to Barcelona, I also went to Berlin to visit the National Academy, the National Youth Academy there.
VCO, yes.
Yeah, the VCO. And while I was communicating with the coach about being able to go do it, he expressed some concerns because he said normally when American coaches want to go visit them, it's to try to steal their players. Sure. I was like, no, that's it. I don't have to do that.
And that happens in certain parts of Latin America as well. Like, for example, someone like Dominican Republic, they try to keep their players for long term. So if you're a Dominican player, for the most part, you're probably going to stay in your country and you're going to train, year round or go and play professionally. So there are specific countries that, it is difficult to kind of like gain their trust in order to get players to get, to play in the U.S. because of such situation.
Yeah.
But I do not believe in the case of stealing players. So I just say, no. If somebody says, you stole my player, no, I did not. And I'm totally okay if a team comes to one of my players and says, I would really would like him to give the chance to move up quicker in the leagues. So I said, okay, go get it. Okay, yeah. You don't always get along with your old club director then, with your own club director. But I always see the player itself and say, this is your chance, just go for it. Never cling to a player. No. Just see the player and their possibilities they have.
Well, on a related topic, Manolo, what are your thoughts on the two? Well, actually, there's more than two at this point, but the professional leagues that are starting to kind of bubble up in the States. We've already got two kind of really grassroots men's leagues that are developing, which is VLA and NVL, I think is the other one, NLA. I forget. And now we've got, the group that USAV announced with Athletes United.
Yes.
And on the Buzz weekly conversation that we did 2 weeks ago, we had Dave Shoji on talking about yet another women's league, more of a proper league. So what are your thoughts on where those things are going?
I think that the one that Athletes United is doing, it's the perfect design to create a national team tryout. So I think that the U.S. has figured out the most brilliant idea to see the best players play against each other, because when you're rotating 48 players, you actually get to see them in the biggest version of randomness. So you want to see their level playing no matter who they have around them. So I think that it would be, I don't know, it was not designed for that, but I think this is the perfect national team type of tryout that any country can have, having such a design for a league. In terms of viewership, it's going to depend. I think that people that really like the game, it's going to go to those games. But rotating people, that you don't get attached to a team per se. Coming from Puerto Rico, where we have so much tradition with specific pro league teams, when they rotate their players, I can see the effect of attendance dropping down because they don't feel attached to who's playing. It's not representing my town. So I think that's how I see it. With Shoji's version, it's more of a pro league then, that then could be an opportunity for us to promote such a league as well. So I think both leagues are great ideas. I think they serve different purposes.
Yes.
And I think the model of Athletes United should be copied all around the world, and I hope they do it in Puerto Rico at some point.
John, you probably know this. Why did the U.S. struggle so many times now already in establishing a professional league? Some leagues stay for 3 or 4 seasons and then it's just over. What do you think are the reasons for this? It's the competition from the big sports?
It's a good question.
NFL.
Yeah, I mean, there's that. Yeah, there's for sure the competition with the big sports. But soccer has demonstrated that you can overcome that. I mean, soccer is obviously a very popular sport. At the participation level, it's huge in this country, but it always struggled in terms of viewership because Americans tended to think it was a foreign sport. Soccer, nobody cares about soccer. It's boring. Nothing ever happens.
My high school, when I was there, 1990, it was considered a girls' sport.
Soccer was?
Soccer was considered in the U.S. Where I was at my high school, it was considered a girls' sport.
That's interesting. That's unusual. I wouldn't have pegged that for being kind of a national sort of feeling.
Probably it was just my high school.
I can say that in Puerto Rico, I used to play baseball. When I changed to volleyball, my mom, the first thing she told me that's a girl sport. So
yeah, volleyball for sure. Volleyball for sure has that tag in a lot of places, not just in the U.S. because you hear it in Europe. I've heard it in Europe as well, which is. Although, ironically, in South America, the men get more focused than the women.
They do.
So, which I find a little bit, it kind of goes counter to the idea, it's a girl sport. Clearly not in South America.
Well, remember that also that's attached to the culture of machismo.
Yes.
That we live in South America. So that's something that hasn't changed much throughout time. That continues to be an issue that is relevant to what we do. Yeah.
When I took the Midwestern State team to Buenos Aires in 2017, we went there kind of just before and overlapping our preseason, which you're allowed to do in Division II, which you're not allowed to do in Division I. Another one of those rules that are different across the leagues. We actually trained at Boca Juniors which
nice.
is a massive club in football. And so we trained in there, the same facility their volleyball teams trained in. They were men and women were training on the courts nearby us. One day we went and they let us eat in their cafeteria, which was used by their academy, primarily for the soccer guys. We were told, hey, listen, women are not allowed to eat here. They can come in and they can get food, but they have to take it out and leave it. So the fact that we're letting you do this is a very special thing. And you can tell by the look by some of the academy guys that like, whoa, there's there's females in here. This is weird. But the girls were like blown away that would be the situation. And even the vocal players couldn't stay with us. When was this?
I didn't know you were that old.
This is 2017. It's not that long ago.
2017.
Yeah.
I have a question for both that I have asked a couple of people that have come to my program. And it's something that, I'm not going to go specifics, but it is an actual issue in the FIVB level. Why do you think that there is a limitation for women to have the same opportunities as men in coaching? Okay. And I'll start with the NCAA. I'll start that knowing that you don't have to be a former stud player to coach. If you're a man, you're going to have a greater opportunity if you were a really okay player, if you did not even play, compared to a woman who usually the ones getting higher are the stud players that then gain the first opportunity as coaches. Like, what is it? Is it a coincidence, or what are we doing wrong that we're not allowing more women and more powerful type of jobs? Do you guys experience this? I will be curious to see what's the situation in Germany. But, it happens in our island. There's one team owner who is a woman. There is no woman head coaches except one in the pro league. Okay. And then in club level, there's a lot of them. But that's it. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Well, Jan, why don't you go ahead and talk about Germany?
I know in Germany that I think about 1 or 2 female head coaches in the first division women.
And one just left to go take the Swiss job.
Yes. Saskia, right. I know there have been female head coaches in the first division Bundesliga men, but this is rare. I'm always very surprised how many college coaches in the US are female. Maybe not Division 1, I don't know, but you see a lot of them. Many coaching clinics I watch on the different portals you guys have. I see very good female coaches. We have even less. And with the volleyball talks we always look to get female coaches into the talks, to get very young, very good female coaches that nobody knows of. I have no answer for this. If I would love to see more female coaches, especially on female teams. I think this is very, very important for the performance as well, that you have somebody who just feels on the same level. I think that female coaches for female teams are much better than male coaches.
From my perspective, we actually had some conversations about this with Lauren Bertolacci, who coaches a Swiss team. Started off coaching a men's team and then moved over to a women's club. Yeah, she's one of you could probably count them on a single hand how many women coaches there are coaching top level teams in professional leagues in Europe. And it's a really interesting thing to look at. In the US, there's on a percentage basis, there's massively more, and on a numbers basis, there's massively more women coaching. And the further down you go, the greater the proportionality becomes. So I think at like Division 3, it's like 70% of the coaches of women's volleyball are women. But obviously, you get into Division 1 and it drops down. But yeah, your point about former players is a big one. And I think, honestly, that a lot of it is just a marketing thing where it's like, hey, we could put down that she was an All-American or she was all-conference in our conference for 3 years or whatever it was. You know, for your start at Penn State, I saw a woman get hired to a Division I job with no prior head coaching experience, but she played at Penn State, which would not happen with a male candidate. I mean, let's face it, if a male candidate had no coaching experience, no head coaching experience, and very little overall coaching experience, would not get a D1 head coaching job in that situation. She didn't stick around very long, as far as I know. I don't know what her record was or anything like that. I didn't really follow up on it. But it was just one of those kind of things. There's definitely an intention out there to have more women coaching. And I know certain administrations, specifically will want to hire a woman head coach. If there's a vacancy, if there's a male head coach, they will strongly advise that they have a female assistant coach.
I agree, John, but at the same time, it's getting to that point where the boss is saying, okay, we're going to hire a woman, but it doesn't happen organically, that there's so many women applying to the position and and they demonstrate to be the best candidate. I can tell you, the other side of that, my boss is a former stud player. Who when she played, she was an amazing player, but has the relationship, recruiting skills, and ability to learn to be where she needs to be. So it's not that it's not that it doesn't happen, but we talk so much about like you being a good player doesn't relate to good coaching. Right. But then this is what we do. So
exactly.
I'm just talking about like how can we embrace more opportunities for women to feel like I'm going to apply because I have a real chance to compete for any position.
Well, and that's actually that's a big focus of the thing we've got Lauren working on as a kind of an outshoot of the Volleyball Coaching Wizards project, which is just a focus on women coaches. And literally the idea is the interview is being done by Lauren, a woman, of women coaches intended for women coaches, especially those early career women who are trying to see what can I do, where can I take, what path can I take for me, and here are some people that I can model, which I think is one of the big problems, especially outside the U.S. In the U.S., you could say, okay, we've got some high-profile women coaches, the Mary Wises, the Kathy Georges, that you could say, oh, okay, I can look at them, and I can see a woman that's been successful in this sort of job. Go overseas, go outside the U.S. There are not a lot of those role models.
Very hard.
Yeah. So that's a big focus of that book.
There was a comment here on Facebook.
I have that book, John.
From Dieter Heydrich. He is from the Bavarian State Federation, and he just says we have 3 levels in German's coaching licenses. We have C level, B level, A level, from bottom to top. And he said they have 50% female coaches on C level, the first license level, and there are only 10 left on B level already. 10% of all B level coaches are female, just for Bavaria, which is the biggest state we have.
Yeah, that's crazy.
But
how about what are you guys seeing? Oh, go ahead. Sorry, Jan.
Role models are a big issue. If you don't have them, it's even more hard. Yes.
Yeah.
Tell me, how about the diversity in this world, for coaches? How many high level coaches are African American or have an accent like me?
Yeah. Who are not foreign, especially.
Right. No, I just wonder, what's your experience on your own places? What's the is it just a coincidence? Are we more attracted to other sports? What has been your experience, and what about your interviews? How many of your guests have been, African American, or or simply, or from different places of the world?
Well, I mean, for me, quite a few of them.
Oh,
not African. I will admit, not African American. And that's and it's an issue. And I think there's one of the issues in the U.S. and I'll let Jan speak to maybe Germany, but our sport in the U.S. tends to be kind of a upper middle class demographic.
well,
Because it costs money. Let's face it. To play junior volleyball, which is where most people get recruited, it costs money. So it tends to filter out quite a few minority type possibilities. So if people who are minorities have a hard time even getting into the system as a player, you can only imagine how hard it is to then get them further along as a coach.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I get it. No, and I can say that I was able to play volleyball because I had a scholarship for it, and in my high school where volleyball was big. But if I would have stayed in my former school, I would have never been able to play volleyball. And, and in my country, I am African American. So like that's why I mean, and so it's, and I agree. And club costs right now, the expenses are, tremendously high, not just in the U.S., Puerto Rico as well, and maybe other places around the world. I do not know.
Club is basically free in Germany, isn't it? For participants?
Club is basically free. This is like ridiculous compared to what you guys pay for club volleyball. So we have a lot of players with, we call migration background, that like in their generation came to Germany, or they came before the generation that came to Germany. Volleyball had the notion being a college sport in Germany from the students, but actually right now everybody's playing it. But it's just, you don't have role models. Most of the people start playing volleyball have parents that played volleyball. Right. So that's also a problem in Germany. The people going to games are either relatives or have played themselves. So there are very little people attending volleyball games in Germany that have had no contact. They just go there because, it's volleyball. I just love this. Men's volleyball. I like the explosiveness. I like the speed. I like the athletics. Or men's or women's volleyball. I do like the long rallies. I love the fighting. In Germany, really seriously, people attending volleyball games, they have some kind of relation to the game.
Yeah, I mean, I've never experienced Puerto Rican volleyball, Manolo. So you give us a snapshot. What does that look like?
Crazy. It's intense. We're obsessed with the game. Like I can tell you that. Imagine this: we're 100 miles per 35, and we have more than 200 clubs. Wow. Like youth clubs. So you get. Imagine those amount of clubs with many teams on them. So it's intense. There's a lot of volleyball is huge in Puerto Rico. I think basketball and baseball continue to be the top two sports. But in terms of high school participation and high school competition, it's high level in terms of how many people care about it. And then if you go to the pro league, I don't know if you guys saw The Last Dance, like those stories from Phil Jackson about people throwing bottles and stuff like that. That still happens.
I just finished the documentation. It was long, but it was very good.
Oh, it's amazing. It was amazing. And I must say, I'm a LeBron fan, by the way, but it was an amazing documentary. What I mean by this is that if you go to a baseball game, if you go to a volleyball game, it's still like fans are really intense still. This is not a league for everyone. Like I know there's a lot of college players coming from the U.S. right away to Puerto Rico, and sometimes it's a shock. An example that I was mentioning the other day was Michelle Barch, who is, as you guys know, a stud. She had a really hard time adjusting to my hometown of Tua Baja, who her home team, in her home court, was screaming and yelling stuff to her every game after game. So it's not an easy situation. Like, I remember, like, myself, as an assistant coach in the pro league, I was getting yelled by people from our own fans about what we were doing with the team. So I don't know, it gets pretty intense, but at the same time, a lot of fun. In terms of development, that's where we can continue to do a better job, just because our players peak too early. Of course, early specialization is part of that problem, but there's a lot of reasons behind that we definitely can do a better job, and I think that we're trying to do so.
Great example right now on Facebook. One of my German colleagues just write yearly club fee 180 euros, third league, third division. So the people don't get paid in third division. So their fee is 180 euro a whole season. And I see here on chat from Ruth, she says $4,300 for 9-year-olds, travel to 10 tournaments in North Texas.
Yeah.
That's the difference.
Yeah. Well, and when I was in England, I remember just being laughing ironically at the people complaining about whether it was 5 pounds or 10 pounds to whatever it was. I was like, you have no concept of how expensive volleyball is in the U.S. If you did, you wouldn't, 5 pounds versus 10 pounds would not get registered at all. But that's the thing.
In a typical German club, the clubs are not mainly volleyball clubs. In a typical German club, they offer all kind of sports. So you can play in your club with the same name. You can play soccer. You can play whatever. And normally for a teenager, you pay about 16, 20 euro a month, and you probably can play 6 or 7 sports.
Wow. Well, and I think that summarizes kind of like why, for example, soccer continues to be the powerhouse around the world, is because of access to the game.
Yeah.
If I am poor or rich, I can still pick up a ball and play on my own with no shoes on, and just go, and go to the grass and do it, go to the dirt and do it, and go to a nice field and still do it. But then providing more access to every kind of level, I think, is the important thing, and I think that's how we can continue to get better in our sport, and we can make it mainstream. Because if we look at the top 3 sports, or maybe 2 of the 3 sports, I'm not counting baseball here, but 2 of the 3 sports are major in the U.S., they have access. Anyone can play it with resources or not. Basketball
courts everywhere.
Yeah, everywhere. Yeah.
Basketball is anywhere and everywhere. I think it's a sport that that you can have the access to it. And then again, football, which is something that kids are playing on the street everywhere. But then I'm not gonna count baseball, because baseball has been criticized because of the same thing, because of lack of access. But but again, continues to be played and participated, mainly now internationals, but it's still one of the mainstream sports in the U.S.
Well, and if you think about the history of volleyball in this country and how dominant Southern California was for so long, a lot of that was access, because they could go to the beach and play, because there are courts and courts and courts for as far as you could see.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't, late 80s when Texas became the first non-West Coast team to win the Division I championship. And then then Nebraska starts to bubble up and things start to become interesting in the Midwest. I think it's good for our sport overall that we're developing more of a business sense. There are more clubs that are what you could kind of call professionally run. They're not professional, but professionally run, full-time directors. They own their own facilities. They have a wide array of programming. But at the same time, going back to the money side, we are losing touch with certain elements of the population where we should be looking to try to find ways to re-engage them. How can we bring in minority communities, lower income communities into the sport so it isn't just a white upper class, upper middle class sort of sport in perpetuity just because everything is forced down the money funnel?
Agreed. No, I think that it is definitely something that if we can find better ways to create that access and maybe that type of equity, not just equality but equity, we can actually be maybe in a better place. And volleyball in the US is already being played so much more in the youth level than maybe other places around the world. So if we can continue to increase that access, it might continue to get better as well.
Yeah, if we can not force people to have to play 6v6 when they're 10 years old, please, can we do that?
Yeah, mini volley. Go ahead.
Yeah, mini volley, exactly, everywhere, mini volley. The one thing that I wanted to do, the one kind of big question I wanted to ask you guys is kind of getting back to where this started. What kind of takeaways have you had from doing your conversations? Jan, why don't you take that first?
It broadened my horizon massively. I got to know coaches. I mean, Germany is compared to the US, it's a small country. Okay, I think it doesn't even fit into California, I think. So it's a small country, but normally you don't get to know coaches from the southern part. Even the second division semi-professional league has north and south. So you get to know a lot of people. Your network increases. You have even more contacts, and there's a lot of knowledge sharing you normally would never have gotten since you don't meet these people. And what followed from the talks itself were these online clinics, the recertification courses. We used these breakout functions here in Zoom, and you just throw people into these virtual rooms where they have to work on a special questions for 15 minutes as a group and come back and present their results like you normally do. And I got feedback from the attendants, and I say that is just incredible. I was sitting in that virtual room with someone from this city and this city and this city, and I got to know new people. I got connected with other guys. So this is the big thing I take out of this, the networking. And it's just, I don't think that coaching Germany has been connected so well and so in so little time before.
What about you, Manolo?
Well, in terms of the game itself, motor learning is the number one priority that we can all have in common, no matter where you come from and no matter what type of level do you coach. There should not be any excuse for any of us to not be involving motor learning into our game. It is the only permanent change that we can make in learners. Okay, so it's not the same as motor development that it changes according to your age or or your body. So I think that this element, you can see that there are differences within that. Like you can find people like Marcelo Mendez, who loves block training, in comparison to then Castellani or Karch, who are much into the random part. But they all agree that this is part of their training every single day. Then you can have also situations where we have to be thinking about how are we providing feedback to our athletes. We passed already the baby booming generation where we can talk about, to athletes like they don't need to know the wild things. I remember I was raised in the 80s and 90s where my parents would tell me, you do this because I say so. But this is not the same situation right now. So the why of things is really important. And because the why is so important, we need to understand how. So talking to athletes is what get people in love with the game, number one. Number two, wanting to learn, okay? And number three, wanting to get better. If we get those three things, no matter what technique or tactic we use, because that's what's going to change in every level in every country. But the constant is that knowing how to learn and knowing how to teach are completely attached to what we do every single day as coaches. So that has been like the biggest takeaways in the game. And then the other one is that the better coaches around the world want to share. I have found out that the more people know, the more they want others to do the same. And I have also found out that the less people know, okay, the less they want to share information, and the more guarded they present to be. And again, this is not just in volleyball. This is just human nature. But it has been reflected throughout these conversations.
Well said,
Yeah.
Manolo. Well
yeah,
said.
exactly. Yeah, a lot of that. That was very similar to my experience going through the first round of Volleyball Coaching Wizards interviews, and just being amazed at how interested that caliber of coach is in continuing to learn and engaging others in conversations about whatever, anything. They don't care. And they're so open about doing it, which is completely contrary to what a lot of people think. And it's something that I've been trying to harp on for years. And a lot of coaches try to harp on it for years. But I don't know if people believe it. Unless they experience it, they don't seem to believe it, which is, both funny and sad on a certain level. Because if they just would send an email to a coach, hey, can I come watch one of your practices? Chances are the answer is going to be yes. But you have to type the email first.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't take that much work. Come on, you can do it. For doing these conversations, I think it's definitely opened my eyes to a lot of opportunities in the educational space, both in terms of coach development. I mean, and the stuff Jan's doing is a perfect example of that. But also in terms of what can we do with our players in new ways, with our teams in new ways, to engage with them, to help them develop, and not just in a COVID-19 situation, but a lot of us were forced to use technologies we've never used before. It's like, okay, now the kids have probably used them. A lot of us may not have used them quite as well as they have, but now that we're maybe kind of closer to being on the same level with them in that regard, it's like, okay, there's a lot of opportunity here in these platforms. How can we make use of them to go beyond the limitations of we can only practice 2 days a week, or we have a 20-hour restriction in terms of our contact time with them and the NCAA rules and all of those sorts of things. And it's just, I look out there and go, okay, where can we really take this stuff and push the boundaries and have some fun with it and really, really make it worthwhile? And of course, it's fun having conversations.
I can say this as well, that even though it's not through the conversations through that Volley Junkies has, but more into my own team right now, I can say that this generation is used to social distance. This is comfortable for them, and I don't want to put everyone on the same table, but I can tell you that technology has actually created that. And technology is a wonderful thing, just like for us, data volley is, or anything like that. It's a wonderful thing, but it could also be dangerous because we become dependent and comfortable with distance. We become dependent and comfortable with being vulnerable as long as I know that I can have the control of not being judged. So this social distance has not been a big difference for many people, because conversations face to face, if you try to have some, conversation like this with an 18 to a 21-year-old right now, it's not that they don't like it. It's that they're used to that type of separation where they have a computer in front of them.
Yeah.
So I think that, so it's a difficult time for us. It's a difficult time for the athletes. But at the same time, I'm not surprised that we're actually getting some of the best GPAs, results in grade that we have had. And it has been common in the NCAA. Look at all the people posting that they had the best GPA that they have ever had. So it is a comfortable situation in that way. It is uncomfortable because you cannot practice the game that you love so much every single day.
Right. Of course, the cynical part of me, Manolo, would be asking, yeah, but what's the grading really been like in this last term since the professors had to radically shift their normal style? So were they really as critical as they might have been in years before?
I don't know. I'll tell you that I don't know about you guys, but I lost my phone like 4 days ago, and it was only for maybe 12 hours, and I didn't know what to do with myself.
You told everybody.
Yeah, I got crazy. Yeah, I got crazy with the phone company. Like, why are you doing this to me? I did it to myself. but yeah, I didn't depend on this before, and now I am highly dependent on that.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
I don't know. Just part of those things that we're getting adjusted through these conversations. But at the same time, just like Jan said, he has gathered us together with people from different countries and cultures that we had never been able to do so.
And there's one more thing. If I see the 40 plus conversations you, John, did, and I hope, Manolo, that your conversations are also already, are they also downloadable afterwards? Are you putting them?
Yeah, they're on Facebook, right?
On Facebook, they're still accessible afterwards. We are creating knowledge. And it is accessible for everybody for years to come. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if this has happened before. I mean, writing a volleyball book is a task. Okay, it's a big task.
So it's translating one, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Okay, and we are just creating knowledge and saving the session and putting it on YouTube, or it's still on Facebook. And if somebody, then we're hashtagging it with the topics, and all the knowledge we create now, it's here to stay. And this is what really hypes me as well, that broadening horizons. This is the point. And I met a lot of coaches where I say, okay, I disagree. I do this differently. But the thing about being criticized is always good. If somebody criticizes you and you say, oh, I see differently, nevertheless, then it is good for you because it made you better. It challenged your opinion. You said, okay, no, I stay with myself. And it made you better in your opinion. Otherwise, if you suddenly turn around and say, okay, man, you're right. Now I do it differently. It made you better as well. So critique, being criticized in both ways is always very, very good. And same thing in coaching discussions, to put their opinion against others. This is incredible. I'm a big lifelong learner as well. I know it's bullshit bingo since it shows up like everywhere, but I'm a big fan. So this is just incredible.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, it's getting late for Jan. Coming up on 11:30. Almost time for him to go, because he's actually got a job that he has to do, unlike some other people.
But I'm still working at home. That's fine.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, appreciate the time. Maybe we'll get a chance to revisit this again somewhere down the road. So, thanks for coming out. Thanks for everybody who's still watching. I know we had to have a couple of people drop off of Zoom, but that's okay. They can come back.
Thank you very much for inviting me again. I'm honored, John. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Manolo.
Good luck.
Good one. Yeah.
Bye-bye.